Sorry about that. I gotta figure out how to turn off that timer sound if I'm gonna have that Google timer in there. Okay, but hey everybody, how's it going? So I should turn off the sound on my monitors here, and yeah, let's move right along here and see what we can do. How's everybody doing today? Happy Halloween! Woohoo! All right, welcome to lesson one. There I am. Welcome to lesson one of the Shakespeare's Delight live stream. This will not be the only time I do lesson one, but this is the maiden voyage. So, yeah, let's see what happens. If you go in the link, you will see two things. You will see the link to the scene that I'm going to rehearse today, and you will see the link to the Google Doc I put together just to kind of give you the backstory of how this whole Shakespeare thing came about. Otherwise, I would probably go on and on and on and on, which gets a little tedious, especially when I'm listening back to these. So let's just dive right into it. This won't be the only time I do lesson one. This is the test run. So any comments that you have, any feedback, anything that makes sense or doesn't make sense, or things that you think I could do better. Anyways, and I am not a Shakespeare expert. I have just had so much fun with this lately. The Shakespeare expert in my life is Judith Sparky Roberts. Yay! My Moonbot director for many years. She got me into this more than anything. And she is my mentor. And I think what I might do is I might have, like, each one of these lessons is going to be centered around one of the 14 scenes that I've learned for the lead role of Richard III, which has been just exhilarating. And I think what I want to do is have her be a special guest at ideally in between each one of these lessons as sort of my coaching session. Because what this is, everybody, is I'm going to be teaching you a lot of stuff, nuts and bolts, about how to understand and especially how to perform Shakespeare. And but sort of in the context, well, very much in the context of me just actually rehearsing it, because it's like when I do my classical stuff, I have to go in and iron out stuff, the wrinkles that are like the stuff that hold me, the measures that hold me back a little bit, and I find that there are lines in all these scenes that are kind of like little bumps in the road, little hiccups. So yeah, well, read the doc and you'll know what I'm talking about there. So let's just dive into it. You'll see how the format of this is going to work, and it's going to be pretty similar for each subsequent lesson. It's going to be the same format, more or less, centered on every subsequent scene. And today we're going to do lesson one. Dun, 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 dun. Let's move me over here. All right, so in this lesson one, which is going to be around Richard III, Act 1, Scene 1, this is actually probably the most consistently performed Shakespeare play since it was actually premiered almost 500 years ago. So, in this lesson, you're going to learn 3 weird Shakespeare words. We'll only try to spend 3 minutes on that. 1 Shakespearean insult for, I'm guessing 5 minutes on that. What else we got? Oh, 1 memory trick. Now these are just not going to be in any particular order. They're just sort of what trick comes to my mind when I'm putting together one of these lessons. I have all these fun little quirky memorization tricks that have helped me along the way and made it a little quicker than it might otherwise have been. So, and then I'll tell you sort of a synopsis about the story, because it really, when you're starting to read this one, there's all this Elizabethan English that you almost know what it means, but not quite. And so we're going to talk about that. But then there's also some historical context that Shakespeare is just sort of assuming that his audience knows about, because of, this is stuff that was happening in the century prior to when he was writing it. So I will give you a brief synopsis on that, and that'll help you understand it more. And there'll probably be a lot of vocabulary in that too. Why did we go backwards there? Oh, and then finally, for those of you who stick around, you sort of get to be sort of a fly on the wall to see me just practicing it. I'll do what I normally do when I'm practicing a classical piano piece. I like to take it once through, start to finish, take notes on the little places that hitched me up a little bit, and then spend the bulk of my time sort of zooming in and looping those trouble spots, and then rewarding myself with a final run through at the end. So it's a good practice routine um, in any case, whether it's doing theater or doing music or whatever. So I call that ironing out the wrinkles. Okay, so let's get to it. Dun, dun, dun. All right, there are two main questions to consider when you're reading Shakespeare. One of them is, I need a little trumpet fanfare button. Okay, first of all, what does it mean? And that's what really catches most people off guard and intimidates them at first, because like I said, it is English, but it is not the most accessible English. It's it's a little dated, and some of the words are used differently than we would use the same words now. But you start to get the hang of it, and it's an aggregate thing. So like you learn what this word means in this play, and then when you're on another Shakespeare play or another Shakespeare scene, then well, you got that one covered. So it does get easier. But also, how does it taste? And I know that's kind of a weird way of putting it, and people are like, huh? So we're going to talk about that, and that's actually the part that's easier to to grasp right away, and it's just as an important part of learning Shakespeare is how to chew your words so that they are more easily understood. Okay, we'll talk about that. That's a little hint of things to come. Okay, let's start with what does it mean? I feel like the guy from Holy Grail at the bridge. What does it mean? Okay, so let's take a very, very popular, probably one of the most popular lines from the play that most people start with when it comes to Shakespeare in middle school. You're usually reading. I think in middle school we read Romeo and Juliet, and then in high school we read Julius Caesar. And this is a great example of words that you kind of know what they're meaning, but maybe not quite. So we got, oh Romeo, Romeo. Wait, why am I doing it in Romeo's voice? I should do it in Juliet's voice. Oh Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? It's from Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 2, as it says. And the first question is, wherefore? What the heck does wherefore mean? Well, you'd think that it means where. And if you thought that, you'd be wrong, because it doesn't mean where. It means why. So when you say wherefore, you're saying why. Okay, now this art thou thing, we kind of know that that means are you, but it's in Elizabethan English. So it's a little bit dated, to be sure. And back then, that was the singular version, the singular form of the second person pronoun you. So if there was a whole bunch of you, you'd say you. And if there's just one person, you'd say thou. Unless you're trying to be polite. If you're trying to be polite to that person, then you say you, even though there's just one of them there. And eventually it just became impolite to use thou with anybody. So it was eventually replaced by you in both the singular and the plural second person for modern English. All right, so, O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Actually means, oh, Romeo, Romeo, why are you Romeo? In other words, why did I have to fall painfully in love with one of my family's worst enemies? Ah! Yeah, okay, so you kind of, it's much more impactful when you know what that sentence is actually meaning, obviously. So, but now we come to how does it taste? Like I said, even though you will spend your whole life getting to know the vocabulary and the meaning of the words, immediately you can dive right into something that I think is of equal importance, and that is how to deliver these words and phrases and syllables. Here, okay. This is dun, 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 your first Shakespearean insult that we will examine under the heading of how does it taste. Okay, so Here it is. Thou sodden-witted lord, thou hast no more brain than I have in mine elbows. Okay, I think we can pretty much all figure out the meaning of that one, so that's not an issue here. Here is how I'm going to coach people how to learn to chew their words when it comes to Shakespeare. Okay, check out that scene, or that line, excuse me, which is from Troilus and Cressida, Act 2, Scene 2. The first thing I want you to do is just silently read it to yourself. So we're going to do that together here. Ready, go. Okay, good. Good job. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to mumble it to ourselves. Ready, go. Thou sodden-witted lord, thou hast no more brain than I have in my elbows. Thou sodden-witted lord, thou hast no more brain than I have in my elbows. Okay, you get the idea. Now, I want you to say it just normally, casually, like you were just saying it to one of your friends. Thou sodden-witted lord, thou hast no more brain than I have in mine elbows. Thou sodden-witted lord, thou hast no more brain than I have in mine elbows. Okay, now we're going to say the words the same way, but we're going to give a complete separation between each one. Not a long separation, just a discrete little space instead of gliding them one into the other, like this. Thou, sodden-witted lord, thou hast no more brain than I have in mine elbows. Okay, step 5, the clincher, is we are going to chew your words. And this is where you're going to stretch out these syllables. We're going to put a little bit extra time and effort into not only the consonants, but sometimes the vowels. It's like you can almost stretch one syllable into 3, or one vowel into 3 vowels if you really chew on it. And don't be afraid to exaggerate it. When you're practicing, especially, if you exaggerate it, then it'll be that much easier to just kind of sink into a deeper groove when you're on stage and you're not thinking about it. And even on stage, Sparky tells me this all the time, you can get away from slowing things down and stretching things out much more than you might think, based on what we're used to doing in casual conversation. So, let's chew our words on this one. I'll go first. Thou sodden-witted lord, thou hast no more brain than I have in mine elbows. Thou sodden-witted lord, thou hast no more brain than I have in mine elbows. And one effect of really chewing your words like that is you will convey the meaning to your audience, even if they don't quite know what the meaning is. You'll actually fool them into thinking that they understood more than they really did. And it's just commanding their attention by doing that. It's really effective. I was explaining this to one of my Imagine That camp classes this summer, and in the middle of the explanation, I switched into that mode and continued my explanation to the class like that. And it was amazing. The class immediately goes from just, wiggly and kind of distracted and talking amongst themselves to all of a sudden, I've got every single one of them in the palm of my hand just by conveying my meaning through that intentional delivery, let's call it. Okay, so chew your words is going to be a big theme for this Shakespeare series. I hope you have fun chewing your words, because it is fun. Okay, memory tricks. Now, this one's a funny one, actually. Slightly off color, not too bad, but there are going to be a lot of different memory tricks. I mean, I learned probably 2/3 of this actually jogging with some little cheat sheets I made. And one thing I do is I keep track of scenes on my numbers of scenes No, I'm sorry. I keep track on the lines from section to section of a scene by counting on my fingers, or just being like line one, line two, line three, line four. So that's like this little visceral, physical mnemonic device I use. But then there's these fun little playful word and letter games that I do, and all other sorts of things. But this one I call the first letters trick, and I'll give you these are just random examples. There's not going to be any rhyme or reason to the series of memory tricks, how they pan out. But this is number one, first letters. Okay, I chose, and this is one from Richard III. This is from Act 4, Scene 4, when I'm talking to Elizabeth and trying to convince Elizabeth to kind of speak highly in my favor towards her daughter, who I want to marry, and even though I just killed her kids, I think. And yeah, it's weird. He is a class act. I mean, and that's putting it really, really lightly. Um, and he's at one point he says, he says all this to Elizabeth, and she's just like mocking him, like, "Dude, you're trying after all you've done. Now you want to marry my daughter," and so she starts mocking him, and he says, "Be not Be not so hasty to confound my meaning. I mean that with my soul I love your daughter, and do intend to make her Queen of England." Now, as we go from scene to scene, each little block of lines that I need to know I call a group. So this is one group of 3 lines. Be not so hasty to confound my meaning. I mean that with my soul I love your daughter, and do intend to make her Queen of England. Now, one little cue I have for that particular group is the first letters. The first letter there is B, starts with B. And then the next letter is I, starts with I. And then Ann starts with A. And so, just to kind of know that block of lines is coming up, I think to myself on this one, dun, 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 dun. Oh, I gave it away. Be not so hasty to confound my meaning. I mean that with my soul I love your daughter, and do intend to make her Queen of England. Bia. Where'd it go? I went back too far. Oops, I'm going backwards. Technical difficulties. Yay, Queen of England. Bia. Get it? Okay, like I said, slightly off color, but they're not all going to be like that. It's just a funny little whatever. And the thing is, it's like you can do any sort of memory trick as long as it works for you, because especially when you get into the meter of this, the ba-da, 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 ba-da. Remember, Shakespeare's meter has like 10 syllables, which is grouped into 5 feet, they call it, of long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short. And it's not like it's dance music, ba-da, 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 like that. But sometimes there's an 11th syllable, sometimes there's only 9, but overall you can kind of predict this basic groove that it's going to be in, and a lot of times all you need is that first word to kind of kick off that whole line, and the rest of it just kind of rolls out. So by knowing, a trick like this, the first letters cues me for the first words, and then that word, once I get it, kind of lends towards the rest of that line just kind of coming out of its own accord, if I've done my homework and my practice well enough. So, okay, that's memory trick number 1. Yay! Okay, let's move on. Okay, story time. Now, we're going to get up to where I'm going to be actually performing this first scene for you. And so a little backstory is definitely warranted here. So let's just bust through this really quick. Okay, so what's going on here is the War of the Roses. It's basically a civil war. There was these, what would you call them? The Plantagenets kind of were the ruling dynasty for a long time. And then there became there was a split within the Plantagenets. There was the York, the House of York, sort of the family of York, and then the family or house of Lancaster. And the Lancasters were the red roses, and the Yorks were the white roses. So that's why I don't know why they got that symbol, those symbols assigned with them, but that's why they call it the War of the Roses. And, okay, so the Yorks and the Lancasters are fighting over the Plantagenet crown. And Edward the Fourth, who is one of the White Roses from the Yorks, he just defeated Henry the Sixth, one of the Lancasters. And so the war is quote unquote over, or at least they're not fighting for the first time in a long time. So everybody's partying down and just having a good old time, except for Richard. Because Richard, otherwise he'd be, totally having a grand old time because he's a duke, he's one of the nobles for sure from the House of York. His dad was Richard of York. But not according to history necessarily, but according to Shakespeare, and there is a divergence, so keep that in mind. And we'll talk a lot about that later. But in this show, Richard has some physical defects. He limps. He's got kind of a not fully formed left arm, and because I guess he was premature. He was just born too early, right? So that's kind of the chip on his shoulder that he carries through life. And so he's not able to just be having the same sorts of fun as everybody else is at this time of peace, as he calls it. So he resolves to have his fun by plotting with lies and rumors that he spreads around to get all the nobles to be suspicious of one another. And so then when they're all fighting amongst each other, he just kind of slips in and takes the throne. And okay, so what he does specifically is he uses these rumors of prophecies to trick his brother, who is King Edward the Fourth, and to think that their other brother George, who's also called Clarence, we'll get to that in a second, that Clarence was going to kill Edward. So Richard puts out this. It's almost like this modern day conspiracy theory thing. He starts putting bugs in people's ears about all this stuff going down. And I guess he has this fortune teller that he somehow kind of plants to see how the king draws the letter G from the kids' reader boards, and that means that the murderer's name is going to be G, which is George's real name, even though we do call him Clarence. And so that's why at the very opening of Richard, after I do my monologue, then I see George Clarence being escorted to the tower where he's going to be mewed up. That's a word we're going to learn. And I'm all like, oh, I can't believe he would do this to you, my poor brother. Okay, so yes, I am very, and I think I just messed up my slideshow here. Darn it, I got to be really careful about that. Talk amongst yourselves, and we will get that reloaded. Yeah, and by the way, let's go over here while I'm waiting to do that and see if anybody is giving me any comments. Yeah, if there's something not working or something that you're not understanding, maybe I don't have the sound turned on, then let me know in the comments or just say hi or whatever. Anyways, okay, we're back to good old fun time here. Okay, so I'm crying crocodile tears for my brother who is being sent to the tower, even though I'm the guy that set him up to be sent there. Okay, and then after he leaves, then the Chamberlain, who's kind of like the Prime Minister. I'm going to make myself bigger here since I've got this real estate. Hey, everybody. Actually, let's do this. And we can actually open it up a little so you... All right. There we go. Okay. So the Prime Minister has already been sent to the tower, probably because I set him up too, and I'm doing, as I say later, I do the wrong and first began to brawl. So I'm like doing all this mischief and then making sure that other people are blaming each other for it. So like right as soon as Clarence goes to the tower, after I talk to him, then Hastings is just coming from the tower, having been released. So then I get to be like, oh, this is horrible. I can't believe they're doing this to you. Da-da-da. Okay, now let's talk about we'll just race through this. This is all the vocabulary you're going to be hearing in the scene that I'm about to do. Now, when I say son of York, oh, and by the way, The opening line to this is one of Shakespeare's most famous lines. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this son of York, which is basically a way of saying, we're not fighting anymore because Edward just won the day. And the son of York, well, because he's the son of Richard of York, and also it's a pun because summer, sun, right? Of course, Shakespeare loves puns. Get used to it. Okay, lower. You'll hear me say lower. It's just another old way of saying lower as a verb. It rhymes with hour. Arms. People generally know or may know that means weapons. Alarums is just a fancier or older way of saying alarms, which is like you'll hear the drums going dun 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 dun, and it's call to arms, the alarms. Barbed steeds, that's what they would call the horses in their armor for battle. Halt, you'll hear me talk about how I halt. That's just meaning I'm limping. And looking glass, I think a lot of people know what that means, a mirror. Descant on. That means, descant means to sing, so if you're descanting on something, you're singing about it. You'll hear me say that. Mewed up, as I mentioned earlier, that means put in prison. And then capers is dancing around, frolicking, having fun. All right. When I first started reading this, I was really confused by the names, and this is why. First of all, Clarence is George. He's the Duke of Clarence. And I think sometimes that's an actual place, and sometimes just this abstract title. I am really not quite sure yet, but you'll hear these characters all more often referred to as their ducal name than their real name. So you'll hear Clarence referred to much more than the name George, but they're the same person. It's George, Duke of Clarence. And Richard is called Gloucester for the same name. I know it looks like Gloucester, but it's Gloucester. They tend to just squeeze these words together, like it looks like Warwick, but they say Wark. Oh, Blow rhymes with pow, and then just Luster. And the others that are called by their dukedom name are York, Rivers, Derby, Buckingham. This is where it gets really confusing because there's 2 Henrys, at least 2 Richards, 2 Margarets, 2 Elizabeths, and 3 Edwards amongst all the opposing sides. So, again, that's stuff that back then the audience would have just known because it was such recent history, but now you, the reader, 400 or 500 years later, are reading like, wait, Edward, wait, and they're on different sides. Wait a second. It was kind of confusing. It took me a while to wrap my head around. All right, so that leads us to the ironing board. And let's actually turn on a different camera here. And okay, excuse me for one moment. I'm going to let's see, rehearsal cam. Should have had this set up. Okay, let me know if you have any questions before I do this. And while I'm setting up this camera here, I wanted to explain something. In addition to giving you the Google Doc with the sort of the backstory of how I'm and why I'm doing this, if you, I also put the link to today's scene in there, because what I want to do is eventually have, let's see, I'm looking for the right camera. There we go. All right, there we are, and let's see if it's working. Okay, there I am. Okay, so like I said, you have each time I'm going to give you the link to the actual scene, and so you can follow along. And also, eventually, it would be really helpful if we got a lot of people into this. Maybe we'll have like some little raffle amongst all the people that contribute their, I don't want to call them entries or whatever. But as you follow along, I will probably eventually start saying yellow or red. Those, because as what we're doing now is we're going to be ironing out these little bumps, and a lot of this stuff I've got down really well, and it's in the flow. But if there's like just a little stumble, that's a yellow. So that's something I'll remember that. Oh, well, that could have been better. But then once in a while, I'll get a total brain fart, or just totally get tripped up on something, and that will be a red. So I'm at the point right now where really I know most of this stuff pretty well. It's a lot easier when I'm doing it by myself than when I'm actually doing it in front of somebody, which is, again, another dynamic that you have to deal with when you're just playing the classical piano stuff. Just one person paying attention can, like, really make you feel like on the spot, and then you got to have that stuff down even more cold than you otherwise would in order to be feeling confident with it. But so let's just see what happens. And what I'm going to do is, like, the opening of this is a monologue, but then there will be some dialogue, and what I'll do is I'll just sort of mumble and paraphrase what the other person says back to me as well as I know it up to this point. And because I've only got my parts memorized, I don't have everybody else's part memorized. Okay, so anyways, the scene opens, and Richard steps forth and says, "Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this son of York. And all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarms changed to merry meetings, our dreadful marches to delightful measures. Grim-visaged war hath smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking-glass, I, that am rudely stamped, and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I, that am curtailed this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world scarce hath made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. Why, I, in this weak piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to see my shadow in the sun and descant on mine own deformity. And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair, well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasures of these days. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous, by drunken prophecies, libels, and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate the one against the other. And if King Edward be as true and just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, this day shall Clarence closely be mewed up about a prophecy which says that G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. Dive thoughts down to my soul. Here Clarence comes. Clarence walks up with people guarding him on his way to the tower. Brother, good day. What means this armed guard that waits upon your grace? Oh, they're just carrying me safely to the tower. Upon what cause? Because my name is George. Alack, my lord, that fault is none of yours. He should for that commit your godfathers. Oh, belike his majesty hath some intent that you should be new christened in the tower. But what's the matter, Clarence? May I know? Oh, well, the thing is, well, and he talks about how the king drew the G, or the fortune teller drew the G, and said that, that's who the murderer shall be, and since my name is G, he thinks it's me. It almost sounds like Dr. Seuss there. Why, this it is when men are ruled by women. 'Tis not the king that sends you to the tower, my Lady Grey, his wife, Clarence. 'Tis she that tempers him to this extremity. Was it not she, and that good man of worship, Anthony Woodville, her brother there, that made him send Lord Hastings to the Tower, from whence this present day he is delivered? We are not safe, Clarence. We are not safe. Well, Mr. Shore gets to go back and forth, humbly complaining to her deity, got my Lord Chamberlain his liberty. I'll tell you what, I think it is our way, if we will keep in favor with the king, to be her men, and wear her livery. The jealous, o'erworn widow and herself, since that our brother made them gentlewomen, are mighty gossips in our monarchy. And then Brackenbury, the guard, comes up and says, "Hey, I was given strict orders that you guys aren't supposed to talk to each other in private." "Even so, and please your worship, Brackenbury, you may partake of anything we say. We speak no treason, man. We say the king is wise and virtuous, and his noble queen well struck in years, fair, and not jealous. We say that Shore's wife hath a pretty foot, a cherry lip, a bonny eye, a passing pleasing tongue, and that the queen's kindred are made gentlefolks. How say you, sir? Can you deny all this?" "Oh, I don't know anything about Mr. Shore. I don't got anything to do with it." "Not with Mistress Shore. I tell thee, fellow, he that doth not with her, excepting one, were best to do it secretly, alone." "Well, who would that be?" "Her husband, knave. Wouldst thou betray me?" "Brother, farewell." No, wait. "Wouldst thou betray me?" Oh, yeah, and then he said, something, 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 something. Oh, and George says, "Oh, we know your charge, Brackenbury. Oh, we understand it. We're just subjects. We are the queen's abjects and must obey. Brother, farewell. I will unto the king, and whatsoe'er you will employ me in, were it to call the king's widow sister, I will perform it to enfranchise you. Meantime, this deep disgrace in brotherhood touches me deeper than you can imagine. Oh, well, it's not good. It's kind of a bummer for both of us." "Well, at least your imprisonment shall not be long. I will deliver you, or else lie for you. Meantime, have patience." "Yeah, I guess I need to." So they take off, and while they're going off into the distance, I kind of snicker to myself. "Go, tread the path that thou shalt ne'er return. Simple, plain Clarence, I do love thee so, that I will shortly send thy soul to heaven, if heaven will take the present at our hands. But who comes here? The new delivered Hastings." Hastings walks up. "Good day to you. As much unto my good Lord Chamberlain. Well, are you welcome to the open air? How hath thy lordship brooked imprisonment?" "Yeah, well, I'm going to get even with those guys that imprisoned me." No doubt, and so shall Clarence too, for they that were your enemies are his, and have prevailed as much on him as you." Hastings says something. "What news abroad?" And then he tells me about how the king is on his deathbed because he's really, really sick. The king likes to party, and it catches up with him. "Now, by St. John, this news is bad indeed. Oh, he hath kept an evil diet long, and overmuch consumed his royal person. 'Tis very grievous to be thought upon. Where is he? In his bed? Yeah, he is. Should we go there? Go you before, and I will follow you. And then Hastings takes off, and I'm starting to think about the king, about that close to death. He cannot die, and must not. Till George. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He cannot live, and must not die till George be packed with post-horse up till heaven. I'll in to urge his hatred more to Clarence, with lies well steeled with weighty arguments. And if I fail not in my deep intent, Clarence hath not another day to live. Which done, God take King Edward to his mercy, and leave the world for me to bustle in. For then I'll marry Warwick's youngest daughter. What, though I killed her husband and her father? The readiest way to make the wench amends is to become her husband and her father. The which will I, not all so much for love, as for another secret close intent, by marrying her which I must reach unto. Yet I run before my horse to market. Clarence still breathes, Edward still lives and reigns. When they are gone, then must I count my gains. End of Act 1, Scene 1. All right, I hope that made some bit of sense. Let's see, I would say there was maybe 2 yellows, 2 reds on that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do it a little bit quicker, maybe, just to see where those hitches are. So, if you've bearing with me this far, then welcome to hanging out with Scotty while he rehearses his Shakespeare time. And this part, the ironing out of the wrinkles phase, you're welcome to stay or go. Please give me comments, any sort of comments on this if you'd like, because I'm really curious to see how this is translating on your end. And yeah, so at this point, I'll maybe have time to just do it once through, maybe a little spot work. Maybe I'll be in the mode and just be in my groove and do it for an hour. It's any of you who are paying attention to my classical live streams 18 months ago at the beginning of lockdown, I was doing it every morning, and sometimes it'd be just an hour, but sometimes I'd go 3 hours because I just get so into it. Anyways, okay, let's try that again. Oh, and let me do a little bit more explaining here. So this widow thing that they're talking about, that confused me a lot. One thing that's happened right before this play opens is King Edward has just married Elizabeth, who was she was recently widowed because her husband was killed in this battle fighting on the other side. So all these people on the York family are like, wait a second, our brother just became king, and he falls in love with the widow of one of the people that we were just fighting. So that's this huge point of contention, because all of a sudden Elizabeth and her family are immediately given all these titles, and all the people that are the Yorks, they're like, whoa, where'd all these people come from? They're our enemies, and now they're part of our court. So that's probably the hugest tension that you have to sort of know is going on prior to the play opening. So keep that in mind. That's who the widow is Queen Elizabeth, who was married to Grey. I guess that was probably a Duke name. Might be actually their last name. I'm not sure. I'll have to check that out. But she was married to Grey. Grey got killed. Edward wins this battle, becomes king, and falls in love with Elizabeth and marries her. And all of a sudden, one of the Lancasters is now his queen. So awkward. Okay, let's try that again. I'll just give it a little bit more of a clip. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this son of York, and all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarums changed to merry meetings, our dreadful marches to delightful measures. Grim-visaged war hath smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking-glass, I, that am rudely stamped, and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I, that am curtailed this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. Why, I, in this weak, piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to see my shadow in the sun, and descant on mine own deformity. Therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair, well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain, and hate the idle pleasures of these days. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous, by drunken prophecies, libels, and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate the one against the other. And if King Edward be as true and just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, this day shall Clarence closely be mewed up about a prophecy which says that G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. Die of thoughts down to my soul. Here Clarence comes. Brother, good day. What means this armed guard that waits upon your grace? I'm going to the tower. Upon what cause? Because my name's George. Alack, my lord, that fault is none of yours. He should for that commit your godfathers. Oh, belike his majesty hath some intent that you should be new christened in the tower. But what's the matter, Clarence, may I know? Oh, well, yeah, this whole thing, well, I guess he thinks because my name's G and I'm the murderer. Why, this it is when men are ruled by women. 'Tis not the king that sends you to the tower, my Lady Grey, his wife, Clarence. 'Tis she that tempers him to this extremity. Was it not she, and that good man of worship, Anthony Woodville, her brother there, that made him send Lord Hastings to the tower, from whence this present day he is delivered? We are not safe, Clarence, we are not safe. Oh, well, Mr. Shore's the one that's kind of sending messages back. Humbly complaining to her deity, got my Lord Chamberlain his liberty. I'll tell you what, I think it is our way, if we will keep in favor with the king, to be her men and wear her livery. The jealous, o'erworn widow and herself, since that our brother dubbed them gentlewomen, are mighty gossips in our monarchy. Brackenbury. Hey, you guys, you're not supposed to talk to each other in private. Even so, and please your worship, Brackenbury, you may partake of anything we say. We speak no treason, man. We say the king is wise and virtuous, and his noble queen well struck in years, fair and not jealous. We say that Shore's wife hath a pretty foot, a cherry lip, a bonny eye, a passing pleasing tongue, and that the queen's kindred are made gentlefolks. How say you, sir? Can you deny all this? Oh, well, I don't know anything about Mr. Shore. Not with Mistress Shore. I tell thee, fellow, he that doth not with her, excepting one, were best to do it secretly alone. Oh, who would that one be? Her husband, knave, wouldst thou betray me? And then Clarence is like, oh, well, we know. You're sergeant, must have it. We are the queen's abjects, and must obey. Brother, farewell. I will unto the king, and whatsoe'er I can, and whatsoe'er you will employ me in, were it to call the queen's widow sister, I will perform it to enfranchise you. Meantime, this deep disgrace in brotherhood touches me deeper than you can imagine. Oh, well, it's gonna be okay. It's kind of hard for both of us. No, I got stuck on that. But brother, meantime, this deep disgrace and brotherhood touches me deeper than you can imagine. I'll have to check that. Oh, well, it's not easy for any of us, you know. It's like, well, at least your imprisonment shall not be long. I will deliver you, or else lie for you. Meantime, have patience. I don't really got any choice. He walks off. Now, go, tread the path that thou shalt ne'er return. Simple, plain Clarence. I do love thee so that I will shortly send thy soul to heaven, if heaven will take the present at our hands. But who comes here? The new delivered Hastings. Oh, good day to you, Dick. As much unto my good Lord Chamberlain. Well, are you welcome to the open air? How hath thy lordship brooked imprisonment? Oh, it wasn't easy, but I'm going to get back at those people imprisoned me. No doubt, and so shall Clarence too, for they that were your enemies are his, and have prevailed as much on him as you. And then he says something, and I say, what news abroad? Oh, the king's not doing very good. He's pretty sick. Could die. He's like been partying too hard. Oh, now, by St. John, that news is bad indeed. Oh, he hath kept an evil diet long, and overmuch consumed his royal person. 'Tis very grievous to be thought upon. Where is he? In his bed? Yes, should we go there? Go you before, and I will follow you. Hastings walks off. He cannot live, and must not die till George be packed up, with post-horse up to heaven. I'll in to urge his hatred more to Clarence with lies well steeled with weighty arguments, and if I fail not in my deep intent, Clarence hath not another day to live. Which done, God take King Edward to his mercy, and leave the world for me to bustle in. For then I'll marry Warwick's youngest daughter. What? Though I killed her husband and her father? The readiest way to make the wench amends is to become her husband and her father. The which will I, not all so much for love as for another secret close intent, by marrying her, which I must reach unto. Yet I run before my horse to market. Clarence still breathes, Edward still reigns. Clarence still breathes, Edward still lives and reigns. When they are gone, then must I count my gains. All right, so I don't have it here right now, but I think a good way to do this is I'll have a little printout and take notes on me, because I don't necessarily remember where the hitches are. Let's go see if there's any comments. Okay, that's wrong computer. And oh, Pete likes it. Hey, Pete. Hey, Eric. Thanks, guys. All right, and yeah, nobody's on YouTube right now, but that's okay because this is just a test run. Okay, since we're all casual here, I'm going to do it once more. And actually, let me grab my Kindle, because another really helpful thing that I will address. Oh, of course, it's out of batteries, so I'll have to look up something else here. Yeah, one thing that I will be talking about in the memory tricks section is Kindles are awesome because one, you can have like 1,000 books in like just one iPad. And another thing is highlighting is great. The multicolored highlighting thing, it's just a joy to somebody like me who tends to make copious amounts of highlighting and stuff I'm trying to learn. And it's kind of cool because, you know, you can go in and highlight. I highlight in yellow all of my lines, and then any place that I get tripped up, I'll highlight in red. And that's pretty helpful, but it's charging up right now. So here's what we'll do. I will do this once more, and I will actually just write down here we'll make a list of yellows. Yellow! What's your favorite color? And reds. Okay. See what happens. I'll even try it. Another thing that I like to do for, it's ironing out the wrinkles trick, as it were, and I use this a lot in Moomba and in Imagine That. I call it speed throughs. It's usually just so speed throughs are great to just rehearse your cues and transitions and stuff, but of course it helps to really see where the little bumps in the road are with your lines. So let's do a speed through here. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this sun of York, and all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarms changed to merry meetings, our dreadful marches to delightful measures. Grim-visaged war hath smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking-glass, I, that am rudely stamped and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I, that am curtailed this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. Why, I, in this weak piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to see my shadow in the sun, and descant on mine own deformity. And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair, well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain, and hate the idle pleasures of these days. And hate the idle pleasures of these days. I'll say yellow. And hate the idle pleasures of these days. Go back a little bit. And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair, well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain, and hate the idle pleasures of these days. Plots have I laid, inductions and dangers. Plots have I laid, inductions and dangers. Plots have I laid, that's a yellow. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous, by drunken prophecies, libels, and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate, the one against the other. And if King Edward be as true and just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, this day shall Clarence closely be mewed up about a prophecy which says that G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. Dive thoughts down to my soul. Here Clarence comes. Brother, good day. What means this armed guard that waits upon your grace? Oh, they're just escorting me safely to the tower. Upon what cause? Because my name's George. Alack, my lord, that fault is none of yours. He should for that commit your godfathers. Oh, belike his majesty hath some intent that you should be new christened in the tower. But what's the matter, Clarence? May I know? Oh, it's because this whole blah, 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 because it's a G. He thinks it's me. Why, this it is. When men are ruled by women, 'tis not the king that... I almost said queen. I almost do that there. King, not queen. Why, this it is, when men are ruled by women. 'Tis not the king that sends you to the tower, my Lady Grey, his wife, Clarence, 'tis she that tempers him to this extremity. Was it not she, and that good man of worship, Anthony Woodville, her brother there, that made him send Lord Hastings to the tower, from whence this present day he is delivered? We are not safe, Clarence, we are not safe. Humbly complaining to her deity, got my Lord Chamberlain his liberty. I'll tell you what, I think it is our way, if we will keep in favor with the king, to be her men and wear her livery, the jealous o'erworn widow and herself, since that our brother dubbed them gentlewomen, are mighty gossips in our monarchy. You guys aren't supposed to talk to each other. Ah, even so, and please your worship, Brackenbury, you may partake of anything we say. We speak no treason, man. We say the king is wise and virtuous, and his noble queen well struck in years, fair and not jealous. We say that Shore's wife hath a pretty foot, a cherry eye, a passing pleasing tongue, and that the queen's kindred are made gentlefolks. How say you, sir? Can you deny all this? Well, I don't know anything about Mr. Shore. Not with Mr. Shore. I tell thee, fellow, he that doth not with her, excepting one, were best to do it secretly alone. Oh, who's that? Her husband, knave. Wouldst thou betray me? Oh, well, you're really not supposed to talk, you guys. I'm telling you. Oh, I know. It's just your charge. We're your subject. We are the queen's abjects and must obey. Brother, farewell. I will unto the king, and whatsoe'er you will inform. That's a red. And whatsoe'er you will employ me in. And what meaning? It's like whatever you want me to do, I'll do it to enfranchise you, which means to get your freedom, to get you released. Look at rewind. Brother, farewell. I will unto the king, and whatsoe'er you will employ me in, were it to call the king's widow's sister, I will perform it to enfranchise you. Meantime, this deep disgrace and brotherhood troubles me more than you can imagine. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Troubles. That's actually a word issue there. God, I've done this 100 times. You'd think I'd know it by now. But that's just the way it works sometimes. Looking it up here in my Folgers. Folgers is a great, great publisher of Shakespeare if you want, because they have the words on the right side and the glossary and meanings and some background on the left side all the way through. And we're looking for Act 1, Scene 1, and meantime, this deep disgrace touches me deeper. That's going to be a red. So we're on 1, 2, 3 yellows and 2 reds. That's not so bad. Touches me deeper, especially for speed through. Okay, we'll rewind. We are the queen's abjects and must obey. Brother, farewell. I will unto the king, and whatsoe'er you will employ me in, were it to call the king's widow's sister, I will perform it to enfranchise you. Meantime, this deep disgrace and brotherhood touches me deeper than you can imagine. Oh, well, we'll get there. Well, your imprisonment shall not be long. I will deliver you, or else lie for you. Meantime, have patience. I don't really got any other choice. They leave. Go, tread the path that thou shalt ne'er return. Simple, plain Clarence, I do love thee so, that I will shortly send thy soul to heaven, if heaven will take the present at our hands. But who comes here? The new delivered Hastings. Oh, good day to you. As much unto my good Lord Chamberlain. Well are you welcome to the open air. How hath thy lordship brooked imprisonment? It kind of sucks, but I'm going to get even with those guys that imprisoned me. No doubt, and so shall Clarence too. For they that were your enemies are his. And I gotta look at that. I mess up the words and the r's. And for they that were your enemies are his, or they that are your enemies were his. Let's see what that is. For they that were. We'll call that a red anytime I have to actually look up the words. For they that were your enemies are his. Now we'll do a little looping. For they that were your enemies are his. Notice that is an exact iambic pentameter. For they that were your enemies are his. 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 And you don't have to do it in like strict sort of rap time like that. Although it is kind of like Elizabethan rap, if you ask me. It's so cool when it gets in your bones. For they that were your enemies are his. For they that were your enemies are his. Just double checking. For they that were your enemies are his. Okay, let's back up a little bit more and then we'll wrap this up. No doubt, and so shall Clarence too. For they that were your enemies are his, and have prevailed as much on him as you. And then he says something, I can't remember what. What news abroad? Oh, the king's not doing too good. Oh, now by Saint... Not by Saint... that's another yellow. Not by Saint John. Now by Saint John. Now by Saint John. Now by Saint John, that news is bad indeed. Oh, he hath kept an evil diet long, and overmuch consumed his royal person. 'Tis very grievous to be thought upon. Where is he? In his bed? Yes. Should we go there? Go you before, and I will follow you. He cannot live, and must not die, till George be packed with post-horse up to heaven. I'll in to urge his hatred more to Clarence, with lies well steeled with weighty arguments, and if I fail not in my deep intent, Clarence hath not another day to live. Which done, God take King Edward to his mercy, and leave the world for me to bustle in. For then I'll marry Warwick's youngest daughter. What? Though I killed her husband and her father? The readiest way. Yellow. The readiest way to make the wench amends is to become her husband and her father, the which will I, not all so much for love as for some other secret close intent, by marrying her which I must reach unto. But first, but yet I run before my horse to market. Clarence still breathes, Edward still lives and reigns. Once they are gone, then must I count my gains. Oh, there you go. Okay, so the score on that one was 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 5, 6 yellows, yeah, and 1, 2, 3 reds. And that's just going to be fun to kind of probably get a spreadsheet going for this and just be able to give myself feedback on what stuff does get ironed out. I just wanted to look up last little thing here. The which will I not all so much for love as for another secret close intent, by marrying her which I must reach unto. But yet I run before my horse to market. Clarence still breathes, Edward still lives and reigns. When they are gone. Did I say when or once they are gone? I might have messed that up. But nonetheless, that is going to be, we'll put it under the yellow pile. When they are gone. Might be a red. I think if I actually miss a word rather than just get hitched up on it, qualifies as a red. But hey, we're making up our own rules here, and it's only for the purpose of giving ourselves feedback to know what to polish next time. So yeah, and again, these are same tricks that you can use when you're doing classical piano. Find those treble spots, spend most of your time on those spots, and and just go back and work on them. And whatsoever you will employ me in. Yeah, some of these lines, even when you remember them, still just are a little bit more awkward in the tongue. So you just kind of have to get muscle memory, just like muscle memory with your fingers when you're playing guitar or piano. There's muscle memory in your mouth, and that takes us right back to the chew on your words. If you really chew on your words, then you will get that muscle memory really inside of you. Okay, so I think that's enough. We will do this again sometime. I will start preparing the second lesson for the second scene I am in. Feel free to read ahead if I have piqued your interest. It's actually a pretty fun play. Richard is, like I said, a class act. The guy is probably the master of passive-aggressive deception and just outright villainy of conspiracy. He just has no compunction about flat-out lying in order to get people suspicious of each other, and then That's how he gets to be king. Yeah. Same old, huh? Okay, folks, I hope you're having a wonderful, fun Halloween. Give me any feedback whatsoever. This is the first time we've done this. It's all an experiment. I just want to make it fun for everybody because I think it can be fun. I don't think it has to be so scary and inaccessible as it was to most of us, and for me, well into my 40s before I stopped being intimidated by this thing that I felt I should know. Because why, and there are good reasons to know your Shakespeare. It's just you don't really understand it until you start to do it and experience it from the inside out. But the way it has helped my writing on so many levels, whether it's my lyric writing or even my prose, and my conversations with people, just having things in little packets instead of ramble, 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 ramble. It's just kind of a cool crucible to tighten up everything when it comes to communication, and just give you a much richer foundation of your English. It's like I said, it's hard to really explain, but if you start doing it, you start to get it, and you start to think, wow, this is kind of cool, this is kind of fun, and then you'll know what it's like for people to kind of look at you weird, like, dude, I don't get it. Why are you so into this Shakespeare thing? So, anyways, let's bring back Shakespeare. Make Shakespeare fun. Okay, give me some hints. Give me some suggestions. Give me some feedback. Ask me some questions. Anything you want to know. And next time I will try to get Sparky here to give me a coaching session on what you just saw. So then we'll get all meta about it, where you can see, the a really important part of the puzzle too is when you do find a coach and somebody that has been steeped in this for a lot longer than you, and just can give you some insights and some tips that would have never have occurred to you otherwise. So I look forward to introducing you to Sparky. And in fact, if you look at the next link that I put in the comments here, then you will see Sparky's 15 minutes of fame back in the day when she was on the Johnny Carson show. All right, people, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Much love. Have a fun Halloween. Go trick-or-treating. And have a good time. Be safe. Love ya. Bye.